Let's turn to the Manchester City Premier League ruling yesterday. And as we said, we've had plenty of time to digest all 175 pages. And what a cracking read it was.
Oh, I loved it.
I couldn't put it down.
A real page turner.
Now, I think, to be honest, most people were broadly they're interested in what went on. They didn't get down into the weeds. But there is one big standout situation that could have a massive knock-on effect for lots and lots of other Premier League clubs and possibly even beyond. The interest-free shareholder loans, which are now in the question, because an awful lot of club I'd say
every club has some sort of loans from
quite
directors.
A lot certainly do. The largesse of directors. And so, okay, let's drill down into that aspect of it and see what it could mean to your club with football, politics, finance expert Ben Jacobs. Hi, Ben.
Good afternoon, guys. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Thank you. Because I think most people looked at this selfishly, saying, yeah, OK, this is City in the Premier League having a row. I know what it might mean for Newcastle, but what does it mean for my club? And it would appear, from my point of view, a layman's point of view, that these loans could be a major sticking point. So what could happen from here on in?
Yeah, one of the biggest wins that City have got is arguably the impact it will have on some of their rivals. So the first thing to say is that current lending in the Premier League is 4 billion, and 1.5 billion of that is in these so-called shareholder loans, which are usually, as you rightly say, interest-free. So that's 37% of total borrowing is via this medium. Arsenal, for example, have got 350 million or so of borrowing. 100% of that comes through shareholder loans. Brighton are another club that regularly use this kind of lending. So virtually every club in the Premier League will be affected, but some more than others. And the key part of the ruling says, under associated party transaction rules, and therefore by implication profit and sustainability, shareholder loans are excluded, but City have successfully argued they shouldn't be. So the repercussion is likely to be that the shareholder loans won't be for book purposes interest-free. There will be a commercial interest rate added, and that will therefore have an impact on profit and sustainability. But the good news for clubs is, first of all, they could bypass that by converting their debt via these shareholder loans to equity. And second of all, we shouldn't look at the total valuation of borrowing and then panic if you're an Arsenal fan. It's about the cost specifically of the loan. So at the moment, if it's interest-free, there's no additional value or debt. Whereas if you add the commercial interest rate, then you will have more than you've borrowed due back for book purposes. And it's that additional commercial interest rate rather than the total loan valuation that could present a problem. But if it presents too big a problem, then I would imagine the clubs will do what I said before and convert the debt to equity. So it shouldn't have a massive impact, but it's an example of Manchester City being able to prove that these associated party transaction rules are anti-competitive.
Do you think, Ben, that the Premier League as an entity is weaker today than it was yesterday? Is this the start of something? Because, you know, at the core of City was this phrase, the tyranny of the majority, the idea that majority of the clubs in the Premier League, if you could get that vote to sort of 14, you know, you got exactly what. So, I mean, where are we at the moment with that? And do you say, is it the beginning of the end, or is it just a little blip along the way and you think the collective of the Premier League is still strong?
No, I think legal experts I speak to think that it's that element that opens Pandora's box, because as you rightly say, football tends to make its laws and the Premier League is very insular, and to pass a major ruling, it's 14. So majority has the ability out of the 20 clubs to dictate the direction of travel. Now there's a chance that a vote could pass 19-1 and that one club could say, the football environment means nothing because there's a bigger legal bubble, and we may see individual clubs with the appetite, the legal team, and the finances that decide to challenge the majority of clubs off a ruling and the Premier League directly and say, why just accept a vote in football realms when you've got European law on your side, and you can go outside of football. So that's where the Premier League could be weakened. One club could end up having a lot of power if they think they've got legal grounding. And the other thing is, of course, the football regulator. And we have to understand the optics of calling the Premier League unlawful and procedurally unruly. So it's not just about the rules, it's about, even if you agree with something, how is it actually enacted and implemented? And this case also shows the Premier League to be slow in that manner and inconsistent. So the other thing that could weaken the Premier League is not just club power going outside of football, but also the football regulator that's incoming, seeing a lot of the criticism of the Premier League's procedures and maybe therefore deciding to do things differently and taking more power, procedurally speaking, away from the Premier League as well. So it is relatively worrying times for the Premier League, even though we should add that they are also claiming victory from this case themselves.
I mean, it is a very successful business, and all the clubs have done incredibly well out of it, including those clubs at the top. But you do start to wonder, in a situation like this is the thin end of the wedge. What is to stop Manchester United saying, "Yeah, we don't like the look of the collective TV deal at the moment. We could make much more if we went out and sold our own TV rights," which has been talked about a lot over the years. So you do worry, don't you, that ultimately this could be the start of something big.
Yeah, and there's no easy solution, because if you take the majority vote away, then you're going to get outraged. The Premier League functions on the fact that everybody gets an equal voice, but all clubs have got different sizes, finances, and ultimately circumstances. So this is the start of something a lot bigger. We saw, for example, the European Super League try and go outside of FIFA and UEFA ruling. We've seen Lassana Diarra win a case against FIFA relating to the international transfer certificate and freedom of movement. So what it feels like, if we bring it back to the Premier League, is that the rules are not robust enough and the processes are very football centric, and nobody's really had an issue with that because everyone's made money over time. But now the league's got to a certain point, as has the politics between individual clubs and the Premier League and clubs and themselves, that each of them are big enough and have their own vested interests that they start to think maybe there's a legal way of us creating our own dominant position outside of the Premier League and changing laws and changing the dynamic. And unfortunately, if the laws within any league, the Premier League in this case, are not robust enough to begin with, then if you're coming up against wider European law relating to things like anti-competition, there's a danger you'll lose, or there's a danger that you'll win and exhaust all your funding doing so, which is not good for any of the clubs or the Premier League either. So it does potentially give big clubs an advantage to change the dynamic. But there's no one size fits all, because one club could change the dynamic and win, and the Premier League could say, okay, we're going to change our rules. And then 19 other clubs could individually say, well, now we've got an issue. And we might find that instead of the Premier League creating a system that predominantly works for its 20 clubs, we just get stuck in red tape.
Yeah, interesting times, Ben. Thank you ever so much. Good to talk.
Thanks, guys.
Ben Jacobs there.
You wonder if then that'll just drip down out of the Premier League as well, Paul. If other clubs that are coming through and if all loans become just up for grabs.
The competitive balance of the Premier League, meaning we have got a lot of great games, and that leads to the TV deals that get done overseas because people want to watch competitive football. That Ipswich can go toe-to-toe with quite a lot of the teams at the top when they come up, and vice versa.
Especially as it grows in the US as well. 40 million people watch the Premier League in America at the week, every weekend. So
it's interesting times for the Premier League.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.